In the darkness of difficult times, when the world seems to lean entirely toward chaos, Stoicism emerges like a quiet yet unwavering lantern. It does not promise a path lined with roses, nor does it preach about easy victories. Instead, it offers humanity a unique kind of power, the power of silence. This silence is not about helpless surrender, but a conscious choice, an awakened stillness where the soul is no longer swept away by the storms outside. The Stoics taught that while you cannot control the world, you can always control how you respond. And within that calm, a resilient strength is nurtured, allowing one to endure adversity with unshakable steadiness. If we listen more closely, we realize that Stoic silence is not empty. It is the silence of a heart that understands the value of what cannot be taken away: virtue, perseverance, and courage. When the ancient Romans faced war, plague, and betrayal, they turned to this silence to preserve their essence. It was not through showmanship or shouting, but through the wisdom of knowing that everything passes. Amid the ruins, those who kept their composure could rise again and continue their journey. That very stillness transformed them into steadfast witnesses of history. Adversity has never been a stranger to human life. From fallen empires to personal tragedies, the story of humanity is a testament to the fragility of the external world. Yet within that fragility, the Stoics remind us to find strength. When we no longer depend on outside stability, we learn to build a fortress within the soul. A fortress no weapon can destroy, no time can erode. It is willpower and calmness, an unseen yet eternal strength that allows one to stand firm even as everything else collapses around them. The Stoics believed that hardship is not an enemy, but a stern teacher. It is only when we face suffering that we have the chance to train our composure, to learn to place everything in its rightful place. A failure may plunge the impatient into despair, but to a Stoic, it is simply a valuable lesson. A loss may break others, but to them, it is an opportunity to forge courage. Adversity becomes the furnace, and silence the glowing flame within it, tempering the soul into steel. Perhaps that is why Stoic teachings still resonate today, echoing across thousands of years. When modern life weighs people down with work pressures, economic uncertainty, or personal loss, the silent strength of Stoicism remains the key to endurance. Instead of complaining or blaming, one can choose to turn inward, to find peace within, and from there rise again step by step. Adversity is no longer an endless abyss, but merely a bend in the long road. Those who preserve stillness will always find a way through, for that calm itself is the lighthouse that guides us through the night. In the modern world, where information floods in every second, where the noise of social media and endless debates creep into every corner of life, Stoic silence becomes even more precious. People are swept into the whirlpool of comparison, praise and criticism, and illusions of success. Yet the truth is, the more one chases these things, the more restless the mind becomes. The Stoics taught that instead of seeking validation from others, focus on controlling yourself. In silence, we cut the chains of public opinion and rediscover our own freedom. And within that freedom, we begin to feel an unshakable strength, untouched by either applause or condemnation. Stoic silence does not mean retreating from life. On the contrary, it is the foundation for wiser and braver action. A person who knows how to pause, to remain silent in order to observe and listen, will not be carried away by impulsive emotions. They are like a calm captain steering a ship through a storm. No shouting, no panic, only a steady grip on the wheel. It is this stillness, that allows them to make the right choices and keep the ship from sinking. And in each of our lives, when unexpected storms arrive, the ability to preserve inner calmness often determines whether we can make it through. History offers moments when the power of silence proved its worth. When Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor shaped by Stoic philosophy, faced war, plague, and betrayal from those closest to him, he did not let fear consume him. In the journals he left behind, we find a soul constantly reminding itself, remain calm, accept reality, act with virtue. He needed no grand speeches, no public praise. Instead, he let inner silence guide his decisions. And because of that, Marcus Aurelius became one of history's most steadfast leaders. Looking deeper, we see that silence is not a passive state, but an active force. It is like the surface of a still lake, seemingly tranquil, yet holding unfathomable depth. In silence, the mind gains space to see the bigger picture, to think before acting. A Stoic never reacts hastily, for they know that reacting in anger surrenders control to the outside world. Instead, they choose silence to keep mastery over themselves. And from that silence, they act with weight and clarity, not because of eloquent words, but because calmness has given them rare insight. Today, when people are tested by invisible burdens, mental pressure, uncertainty about the future, the loneliness of being lost in a crowd, the Stoic lesson feels all the more profound. Silence not only helps us withstand adversity, but also helps us rediscover our true voice. For only by stepping away from the external noise can we hear the deeper rhythm of our soul. And once we hear that voice, life's upheavals no longer terrify us. Because a person who understands themselves, who maintains inner stillness, holds a strength that nothing can defeat. There is something fascinating about Stoic silence. It not only teaches us to be resilient in the face of adversity, but also teaches us how to truly understand others. In silence, we listen more, we observe more, and through that, we develop deeper empathy. The Stoic does not place themselves at the center, nor do they let ego obscure the truth. Instead, they use stillness as a mirror to reflect on themselves and to clearly see the suffering and weakness in others. From this awareness, compassion arises. For a soul that has been tempered in the furnace of hardship, that has learned calmness amid storms, will know how to reach out and help others who are struggling in their own tempests. History remembers countless people who found greatness not in shouts or applause, but in unwavering silence. Epictetus, a slave who became a Stoic philosopher, lived a life far from easy. He endured harshness and injustice, yet instead of resentment, he chose silence to discover inner strength. To him, external suffering was merely a test for the training of virtue. The words he left behind, simple yet piercing, stand as proof of a spirit that could not be broken. Across centuries, his Stoic silence continues to echo, inspiring those seeking a way through suffering. When we contemplate more deeply, we realize that silence is not an escape from the world, but a way to live in harmony with the flow of the universe. The Stoics believed that all events follow the logic of nature. We cannot control what happens, but we can control our attitude toward it. And that attitude is nurtured in silence, not resisting fate with despair, but embracing it with steadiness. Like a branch that bends with the storm, not breaking, but becoming stronger, humans too can learn to live in harmony with upheaval without losing their essence. In today's society, many equate silence with weakness, but Stoic silence is the expression of strength. Those who remain silent do not do so out of fear, but because they have risen above the need to prove themselves. They do not need to shout to affirm their worth, for their stillness alone radiates a powerful presence. Like a mountain standing tall against the sky, they command respect without words. So too with the Stoic. Their silence is not darkness, but a gentle light, illuminating the path for those lost in the noise. And perhaps the most miraculous gift silence brings is liberation from fear. Human beings fear loss, fear failure, fear death. But the Stoics believed that in learning silence, we learn to face fear directly. In stillness, we recognize that death is simply part of life. Loss is but a bend in the road. Failure nothing more than a lesson. All of it belongs to the natural cycle, with no reason for panic. And when fear dissolves, we discover true freedom. A freedom no one can take away. A freedom found only within a soul disciplined by silence. When we look at humanity's journey, it becomes clear that the greatest turning points have not always come from the noise of the crowd, but often began in silence. It is the silence of thinkers, of philosophers sitting in small rooms, writing words that would one day reshape entire civilizations. It is the silence of countless individuals who trained patiently, whose names history may never record, yet whose perseverance became the foundation upon which history was built. Stoicism reminds us of a profound truth. Sometimes it is quiet endurance and humble silence that move the world most deeply. In our personal lives, each of us fights invisible battles no one else can see. It might be the grief of losing a loved one, the injustice of the workplace, or the weight of long-lasting emotional wounds. Many choose to display their pain openly, but the Stoic takes a different path. They embrace silence as a medicine for healing, for they know that lamenting does not erase hardship, it only deepens it. Only silence grants them the space to mend, to be reborn, and in that process, they emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The Stoics also remind us that silence is not just for moments of suffering, but also for moments of triumph. In success, silence guards us against arrogance. In glory, silence keeps us from losing ourselves. History is filled with figures who fell not because of failure, but because they could not remain humble in victory. A Stoic soul, however, always knows how to step back in silence, seeing success as something natural, not something to boast about. In that way, they preserve their balance, never blinded by fleeting glory. When we learn the art of silence, we also learn to distinguish what truly matters. Amid the endless noise and turbulence of society, silence becomes a compass. It reminds us that money, fame, and power are fleeting, while what deserves our care is inner peace and virtue in action. For the Stoic, silence is a way of life, an art of living each day not swept away by emptiness, but shaped by eternal values. And in the end, when we have weathered all life's storms, when our hair has turned silver with time, what remains is not how many times we shouted to prove ourselves, but the calmness that carried us through it all. This is Stoic silence, a quiet, unyielding strength, like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat that sustains life and keeps us moving forward. When we grasp this secret, we not only overcome adversity, we also uncover the true meaning of life, to live in freedom, peace, and steadiness amid a world of endless change. There are moments in life when we realize that adversity does not come to destroy us, but to test the strength of our inner spirit. The Stoics viewed every challenge as a trial set by fate, where silence becomes the most powerful response. Instead of resisting in panic, they chose to listen to the quiet tremors of their own soul. That stillness allowed them to stand firm, like a rock amid crashing waves, unshaken by the storm. And it is through these trials that people truly discover the resilience and endurance they never knew they had. History shows us that those who embraced Stoic silence often became timeless symbols. Nelson Mandela, after decades of imprisonment, did not answer with hatred, but chose composure to lead an entire nation. Though he never claimed to be a Stoic, the spirit of Stoicism was evident in the way he endured in silence, and then, when freed, chose forgiveness over anger. His life reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength is not found in loud declarations, but in the quiet patience that waits for the right moment to act wisely. Stoic silence also teaches us to see failure through different eyes. To most people, failure is the end, but to the Stoic, it is only a curve along the long road. They remain silent to analyze, to draw lessons, and then to move forward without complaint. In this way, failure ceases to be an enemy and becomes instead a stern teacher. And through walking silently with that teacher, people grow wiser, steadier, and more self-possessed. Silence is not only for facing failure, but also for confronting pain. When someone loses what is most precious, resistance often only plunges them deeper into despair. But in silence, pain can be faced directly, accepted as an inevitable part of life. The Stoic does not deny pain, nor do they let it consume them. They let silence become a mirror, where pain is slowly dissolved, where the heart finds a new balance. And from that balance, they move forward with stronger, steadier steps. Most importantly, silence opens the door to true freedom. When we remain silent before temptation, we are no longer controlled by it. When we remain silent before insults, we are no longer ruled by emotion. When we remain silent before fear, we realize that nothing can bind us anymore. The Stoics called this the highest freedom, the freedom from within. A freedom no power can impose, no loss can steal. And it is this very freedom that lays the foundation for a life lived fully, no matter the adversity. In the final years of life, when we sit and look back on the past, what lingers is not the arguments, nor the loud voices, but the calmness that carried us through it all. Stoicism teaches that silence is the treasure we accumulate from every hardship endured. It is like an underground spring, nourishing the soul and keeping it from drying up even in the harshest droughts. Those who have weathered many storms and learned to keep silent often radiate a gentle yet enduring light, one that inspires trust and draws others to learn from them. If we look at the grand picture of humanity, we see that every civilization, no matter how glorious, eventually faces collapse. But what remains are always the inner values that people preserve. Stoicism, with its power of silence, is part of that legacy. It does not fade with time, for it does not live in monuments of stone, but in the way people choose to live and face life. The teachings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius remain timeless, because in every era, humanity must face suffering and adversity. In today's world, where everything shifts at a dizzying speed, Stoic silence is more necessary than ever. Amid the noise of information and the chaos of ambition, silence keeps us grounded. It reminds us that happiness does not come from conquering more or owning more, but from the ability to live peacefully with what we already have. Those who know silence do not chase illusions, nor do they let the world sweep them away. They stand steady in their own chosen path. This is a lesson more precious now than at any time before. It can be said that the power of silence is the path to true maturity. For in silence, We learn self-control, clarity of vision, and a deeper way of loving. The Stoic does not remain silent only to protect themselves, but to create space for kindness and genuine connection with others. Such silence does not detach us from life. It allows us to join it more wisely, more sustainably, and more humanely. And in the end, when the curtain of life falls, those who have lived with a Stoic spirit carry no regrets. They have learned to be silent before fear, silent before loss, and even silent before death itself. For them, everything is but a natural part of existence. Passing away is not an end, but simply a transition in the endless flow of being. And in that final moment, silence is no longer a tool for surviving adversity. It becomes the ultimate testimony to a life lived in freedom, peace, and meaning.